The psychology behind all that is absolutely fascinating. I am also fascinated in the psychology behind the Brooks Koepka Bryson Dechambeau rivalry. It's a sports rivalry, but it's bigger than that. It feels like a life rivalry. These two guys represent like the yin and the yang of this world, the opposite ends of the spectrum. You got Brooks, who at least plays the character of laid back, cool guy, jock, who's like against the movement of golf. And then you got Bryson, who's like, he feels like the silver spoon, spoiled kid who takes it very seriously. And equally, they're both good. I mean, Brooks obviously has way more majors, 4 to Bryson's 1. But they're both like, top of the top of the top. Bryson with the longest drive in the game, an absolute scientist with how he manages his game. Brooks kind of gives you the perception that he rolls out of bed and just plays golf and doesn't really care for any of the etiquette and the tradition. But all of it to me is fascinating. And this latest run-in they had together, where the golf network, this scrapped video that never made it to air, got leaked on the internet. Bryson DeChambeau walks by, interrupts Brooks's interview, and Brooks is totally flustered. He's like cursing under his breath, and it just continues this rivalry that I think people are so fixated and fascinated on because, like I said, it feels like a macro. It's like a microcosm for the bigger picture, for like what it's like, almost like blue collar versus white collar, rich versus poor, underdog versus the spoiled kid, which is not, by the way. Both of these guys are elite golfers. The fact that we portray Brooks Koepka as like some sort of like they pulled him off the docks working at the factory and he's like Mark Wahlberg in Invincible. He just happens to be a great golfer. Like, no, he acts like he doesn't care about golf. It's his entire career. It's his life's work. He's the elite of elites. You don't just like stumble upon that. Maybe he doesn't care for the dress codes and some of the traditions and etiquette, but for the most part he does. Because when times are going good and he's winning majors, he's like, I don't fucking care about any of these guys or any of these things that don't matter. But, when he loses to Phil on 18 in the PGA Championship and he doesn't like that there was mobs of fans bothering him, he starts complaining. And he should. He doesn't have to keep up this perception that he's like, he doesn't like golf or doesn't care about it. Like, you do, man. It's okay. For the most part, I get it. When he makes his Part of My Take appearances, he seems like he's a normal dude. The be normal eye test. Brooks Koepka passes it. Bryson DeChambeau doesn't. But also, I'm not watching this for when people say like, Brooks is a great guy. I'd love to hang out with him in real life. I want to get a beer with him. That's not what I'm here for. If these two guys are in front of me, I'm like, yeah, Brooks, like, let's go hang out. Let's go watch the game. Let's go sit on a bar stool. Bryson, no thanks. But when I'm watching golf as a fan, as a viewer here, I want the Bryson DeChambeau heel. And that's why they're really the perfect complement for each other. They're like the foil. Like, Bryson's the perfect foil to Brooks in my mind. And I guess you can't have one without the other. You need like the kind of the hero, and he's a little bit the villain. You need the face and the heel. But to me, the heel has always been more interesting. I think I've always felt that way, watching wrestling, even watching the movies sometimes. I'm not like the contrarian who like roots for the bad guy. But as much as I loved like Stone Cold and The Rock, I always acknowledged that like you needed a Triple H. You needed a Kurt Angle. You needed the heel who was either like the bad guy or the annoying guy. Like the badass, like, holy shit, like you're scared of this guy and he's an asshole. Or the like, oh, this fucking guy gets under my skin because he's such an annoying dork. And this is a real life version of that. I think to some extent Bryson hams it up. I think he has more self-awareness than people realize. But I think what makes it so beautiful is that Bryson, for the most part, is being himself. It's a little bit trumped up. He leans into it, certainly on social media, just like the rest of us all do. Everything on social media is heightened, whether you're doing it professionally or just personally. So I think he's got enough self-awareness. But for the most part, he really does, want to study the effect of the wind on the ball and the blades of grass. He really believes that the ant hole will affect his play. He, when somebody calls him Brooks, he kicks him off the driving range. Like, you can't buy that. You can't get that at Wawa. There's certain behavior, whether it's villain, trolling, heel turn, whatever. It's so rare. Because when you get to that level, most of the time, these guys are heroes. Most of the time, these guys are the best. They're the coolest. They get the girl. They get the money. They get the championships, the money, all of that shit. Their whole lives, they've been, the best in their league, the best at their age, in their school, and then eventually go to the pros. And maybe you're not, the absolute best. It's like there's LeBron. But, Dame Lillard is just as much of a hero to all these kids out there. And you always kind of play even if you're not the actual best, you're within the top 1%. And there's very few people who ever end up being the bad guy because you're adored and beloved and idolized. But Bryson, because of the way he goes about it and the way he looks and his name, Bryson Dechambeau, huge part of Bryson Dechambeau is his name. It's like the Elon Musk effect. If Elon Musk's name is like John Steinberg, I don't think he has the same clout. But Elon Musk is this like perfect name that feels like it was scripted. Bryson Dechambeau, if you're trying to make an asshole country club cake eater snob, it's him. Bryson Dechambeau on the golf course with the Kangol hat, like on forward, and like he looks like it's funny because he's a nerd, but he's also a meathead. So it's like this paradox that's unlikable all around, and he just looks like he's a social misfit, and he kind of is. It's perfect. In all of my years of watching like sports rivalries, this like so-called blue-collar jock, which again, he's really not. Like if you take Brooks Koepka and all the other athletes of the world, he's the dork. If all of his buddies are like football players and basketball players, and they're like rough and tough and cool and swaggy, he's the loser. If you put him in a room with like, Brady and like Steph Curry and Bryce Harper and like those guys, it's like, oh yeah, like Brooks, like, respect your game and you win, but like he's not the cool guy of the bunch. He's still the golfer. Within the golf world, he's the man. It's like in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. In the land of, the no nose, the Saigon whore. What is that? What? Dirty work? I don't remember. Anyway, Brooks Koepka is only cool within this when you compare him to Bryson Dechambeau, and that's why it's perfect. The world of golf needed someone who's looking like cool, and you need the villain who takes that golf persona to the next level. And I know people say like, oh, I knew KFC was going to have this take that he's defending Bryson. And it's not in an attempt to be contrarian. It's not a knock on Brooks. I actually do personally think if in real life, like I said, he's the more personable and likable guy. But I think it's just a healthy respect for a good villain, for a good heel. That is so hard to come by. The world is filled with heroes. What the world doesn't have are the true type of villain who evoke so much hatred or like a visceral reaction. Like we've heard all the feel-good stories. Everybody's got the great, tale of how they made it. They worked hard, 1 in a million genetics. They've got the pretty wife, the cute kids, the bazillion-dollar mansion. What I want to hear about is the asshole. The guy who, his peers fucking hate him and the fans don't know what to do with him. And, the guy who's like, we fucking hate you. And he's like, oh, yeah, watch this. He's got the longest drive in the game. He breaks the rules. Or not breaks the rules, but he breaks the mold, does things different and weird, and somehow still wins. That is just a better story to me. The guy saying, I don't even like golf. It's corny. I don't believe it. It's kind of cliche in a sense to be like I don't even care about these things. Like Bryson's like, I do care. I care about it so much. I care about it more than my fucking life as I know it. And the game that you guys struggle so hard to crack when you're trying to get out there and break, 140. And I've studied every inch of this game. And I got a short game. I got long game. And he's not afraid to admit it. And he's like, I am who I am. He does admit that he wants to be loved. Like he's a flawed kind of again, I don't want to use the word villain, but he's like this, it's like an anti-hero because he's made it and people root for him, but they hate him. That to me is so much more of an intriguing story. So, I mean, there's the Brady and Manning. There's like the in pop culture it was Shooter versus Happy Gilmore, and to me the best example was The Rock and Kurt Angle. Brooks Koepka's The Rock. He's the face. He's the guy that everybody loves. He's cool. And then there's Kurt Angle, who at the time you were like, you know, the music and the whole personality and everything about Kurt Angle like you hated. But it was so unbelievably scripted, and you needed that to bring out like the coolness of The Rock. That's why Brooks versus Bryson is one for the record book. So I do give Bryson the W on this round. I think that Brooks looks flustered. I think Brooks didn't have a comeback for Bryson's talking shit, or if he was just walking by wearing spikes. That's another thing. These golf fans who are like, Bryson's wearing metal spikes, what an asshole. I don't hear you complaining when Tiger Woods does it. Because he notoriously, famously wears metal spikes too. Yeah, it makes a loud noise and it tears up the course and people don't like it and it's antiquated. But like, what golf fans don't like is shit like the reason why you think Brooks is cool is because he doesn't give a shit about the dress codes and the traditions and the etiquette. But then you're all gonna turn around and get up in arms about the metal spikes. You're all Bryson. You love Brooks, but none of you are Brooks. The reason why foreplay is so successful is because they talk the talk and walk the walk about being average guys golfing who don't care about, you know, what your shirt looks like, what your game looks like, what you wear, how you walk, how you whatever. It's all about just like playing golf and like drinking with the boys. But everyone else in the golf world is upset when they break the unwritten rules or when they violate some sort of old school tradition. And it's like, so you're all... What you all love about Brooks, none of you actually, you don't live that. You're all Brysons. You're all worried about like the little things. So I don't know what that says about the world of golf, but it's an interesting it's a hypocritical thing to be, you know, we hate Bryson, but deep down you're worried about his metal spikes. You're all being Brysons. But one of the best rivalries out there. I hope there's like 10,000 more rounds. Ultimately, until Bryson catches up on some of those majors, it's going to be tough to continue to like hold him in the same regard. But as long as he's in Brooks Koepka's kitchen, the way he is, like if every time I just walk by, you can't talk. Like that was almost like when a pretty girl walks by and a guy's like, "What? I lost my train of thought." Like what? Like Bryson Dechambeau has that effect on Brooks Koepka, where it's like you can't even see me, you can't even be near me without, you know, completely wilting and falling apart. What we need is some sort of showdown, final pairing one day, you know, 1 and 2, going into the final day of a Masters or any other major, or something to happen at the Ryder Cup or a skins game, some sort of challenge like Phil and Tiger. What we need is a true Bryson versus Brooks on the golf course now that this is all on this level. Now that this rivalry has been brought to the forefront, we need it to play out on the golf course. And I think I'm going to be Team Bryson. I know people think that I do that shit on purpose, but it's just a healthy dose of respect for a good, real heel, because they are hard to come by.